Welcome to our executive interview series at Fed Talks, presented by FedScoop. I'm Wyatt Cash, and we're here with Shane Barney, Chief Information Security Officer at Keeper Security. Shane, thanks for joining us. Always good to see you.
It is a pleasure to be here.
So one of the places I like to start is, how are you seeing agencies these days leveraging AI to improve decision-making across their organization?
Well, I think the AI question in general is just that, a question. Obviously we need to just talk definition. I mean, we're not really talking about AI broadly as much as we're talking about generative AI, the new kid on the block. We've had machine learning and predictive analytics and even some neural net learning stuff running around for quite some time. When I was still in government, we started utilizing it in 2015. So it's not new. Where I see sort of the new questions coming up and where solutioning and good decisions need to be made is sort of the use of generative AI going forward and where it makes most sense. We're still trying to figure out the risk model for it. We're still trying to understand how to incorporate it into our overall sort of risk process and risk management processes. But, that being said, we can't ignore it. Like, if we do that, it would be to our detriment. So the question then is, where do you employ it? And as a security professional, I've always said that if you want to defend against generative AI, you need to employ generative AI. But that's sort of a dangerous proposition. It's like, well, what does that mean exactly? So, and I'll use Keeper's products as an example. And what they're doing, they're ready to deploy what they're calling Keeper AI. And Keeper AI is a service that runs as part of their overall PAM products that watches and monitors the actual session recordings. So session recordings are best practice when it comes to privilege management. It literally is exactly as it sounds. It's a screen grab, like a video of what a privileged user is doing throughout their session. So if they're on a server for 2 hours, it's a recording of all 2 hours. It's a lot of information to store. It is really useful information, but not in the moment. In other words, nobody's going to sit there and watch all those videos if you've got 1,000 privileged users running around. So it comes along generative AI going, well, wait a second, generative AI can do that. And in fact, does it quite well, and it does it better than humans. It is a really, really good, very specific use case, but it acts as a force multiplier for security organizations. Because now it's like, I'm doing this session recording because it's the best practice, but I don't get much value out of it. Insert Keeper AI, and now you're not only are you doing something that's the best practice, but you're getting value back out of it because it's going to capture things that logs in and of themselves will not. And so I think that when you start talking about decision making as it relates to where to deploy generative AI, you should be looking at it from a force multiplying capability. Like, where can I insert it into my organization where it adds value, still has human oversight. In other words, you don't want it running rampant, but at the same time, at the end of the day, it adds value back into the organization in such a way that you normally wouldn't have had access to.
It's an interesting use case, and appreciate you sharing that. Next, talk to me a little bit about kind of where you see agencies moving forward to adopt the NIST's relatively new cryptographic standards to protect data from future exploitation from quantum computing.
Yeah, quantum computing is an interesting. I mean, it's one of those things that you keep hearing about it. It's like, oh, it's way off in the future. It's not. Like, it's going to run us over like a freight train. And one day we're going to wake up and so you're going to turn on the news and there it is. Post-quantum equipment is here. Oh, by the way, go out and buy your new Apple iPhone because it has post-quantum encryption built into it. But anyway, what I find so fascinating about that, one, I have to commend NIST here. I've been a little critical at NIST at times in the sense that they tend to be a little more reactive. In other words, it takes them several years to come out with new vulnerability guidances for something that should have done really quickly. In this case, this is one of the really good few times when you see this proactive measure. They knew this was coming. They knew they had to do something about it. And they started developing sort of overall standards. Hey, this is what you need to start looking at. And so if you're a company or even government or private sector, or a public sector, you need to start first with your inventory. Like, where does this apply? Now, if you're in the cloud or even on-prem, you're going to have encryption all over the place, probably in places you don't even realize. So understanding your overall inventory, where it is this is going to have to be affected and where you have to take action, where are there other places you could have mitigating factors? Is it, buried under various sub-layers of defense? It's not publicly exposed. There's different things that you could look at. But at the end of the day, you've got to understand your overall exposure. The next thing is starting to build both hardware and appliances as well as SaaS products and software that is crypto-agile. In other words, we're going to have to be able to be adaptable. If I'm reading the tea leaves right, post-quantum encryption is going to not last long, and we have to come up with another one, and then another one, and then another one to stay in front of it. You've got to be able to update you have to update the encryption factors that quickly. The last piece that you have to take into account, and this is something that Keeper started already doing. We're getting ready to do our post-quantum encryption deployments for our product line, and I know even in government, some organizations are starting to do it as well. But you do have to test for overall performance, because the post-quantum encryption algorithms are much larger, much larger. The key material is bigger. The compute time, it requires a lot more compute time. It'll have an impact on your network. A single transaction, not a big deal, but when you're talking billions of transactions, that little bit of key material suddenly begins to add up. So your organizations really need to get in front of that and testing their product lines, and then making better decisions of how they're architected to offset the performance hit.
Well, Shane, Barney, always appreciate your insights on the subject of cybersecurity and how agencies and organizations are adapting the fast-changing marketplace. So thank you so much for joining us here at Fed Talks.
Thank you. Thank you very much.